Okay, President Joyce, we're all set.
President Joyce, welcome back from lunch. We will now continue our review of drug compounding rules, starting on page 17 with OAR 855-183-0560 with staff member Runyon.
Sorry, I need to minimize this. Yeah, it should be page 17 for the public, but it may be different for us. Let me just get down there. I need just a good roll number.
Good afternoon, it's Executive Director Runyon. So big shoes to fill following staff member Efremoff for after that excellent display facilitating. So I'm sure I'll live up to those standards today, but I'll try. I think she did such a good job. She mentioned she might want to facilitate this strategic plan meeting.
Did that one on?
So yes in the chat, so.
All right, thanks everyone who's in attendance and for your time and attention and participation in advance. We'll start with OAR 855-183-0560, which talks about master formulation records. So go ahead and read the rule, provide a little commentary where applicable, and then open it up for questions immediately following. So you see here, we have the same question of the effective date, which of course is up to board discretion. I'll go ahead and read the rule. It says, in addition to the master formulation record requirements specified in USP 797 or 795, that master formulation record for a CNSP must contain the following at minimum. Parent 1, appropriate calculations to determine and verify quantities and concentrations of components and strength or activity of active pharmaceutical ingredients or APIs. Parent 2, compatibility and stability information, including USP or other available references. Parent 3, appropriate ancillary instructions, such as storage instructions, cautionary statements, including hazardous drug warning labels where appropriate. Parent 4, other information is needed to describe the compounding process and ensure repeatability. And Parent 5, any other information required by the outlet's policies and procedures. Again, this is just standard language as you see in some of the preceding sections. And President Joyce, I'll turn it over to you for board comment.
For President Joyce, we're wanting to go round robin on each one? Or did you want this, did you want to dictate the round robin?
Executive Director Runyon. So I think in line with what we experienced for the PPL conversations, we're more looking for general guidance here as opposed to voting on a motion. But yeah, the round robin, if you want to help facilitate that.
Yeah, so I'll start off first. This particular section, I personally don't have a problem with it. It spells out clear language as far as what the expectation is regarding mass formulation for non-sterile products. It's not overly restrictive. At least that's how I see it.
Member Kirkbride, I'm not sure if anyone can comment where these extra items came from. So my general feeling is if we're referring to 795, and I see these repeated, for several sections. If we're referring to 795 and we feel like there needs to be something above and beyond, did they come from some reference that we could cite instead of spelling them out in multiple sections? So I'm not sure if these came from another reference or if they were things that were drafted in previous versions. So I would just prefer to see it cited and referred back to USP rules if that's where they came from, because it seems very wordy. I don't have a problem with the content.
Board Member Smith. Yeah, I think the most important part about these guidelines is that they do reference back to USP, and we do our best to make sure we are just referencing that and not increasing the burden because all of the compounding pharmacies will be following USP, and that is like a very good national standard for everyone. And I think it just helps keep, I think when we start adding extra things on, that's when it gets more challenging for the compounding pharmacies. That's all. Thank you.
Member Patel. So before I make any comment on this section, need some clarification how this is going to. So my question to you, Angie, Park. So I know what happened in the compounding rule. We did not follow the normal process, right? We didn't even do the first, second, third review. We sent it to the public. We got the comment, right? I understand that. So if we are going to we're going to comment on this one, how this one is going to be, look like, staff is going to write down just like law for rule, right? And then it's going to be first review, second review, go back to the public to make a comment. And the only reason I'm asking is very important because when we write down all those rules, that time the USP, they have the draft rule. It was not finalized. But now it is sort of finalized. And then now, I don't know how licensee comment. So that's what I'm at, like, what we are doing here. Thank you.
I know I've actually heard you mention a few times that draft one, draft two.
Yeah.
So that's I think a policy or some sort of procedure that you.
Yeah, board do, yeah.
The board does, right? That's not a requirement.
No, that is not, no.
Right. I don't know if that's something you guys always do on every rule or.
That, the board member Patel, the reason is like, that's what I understand. You know what I mean? So I didn't, so that time they just say, don't do anything, just collect the public comment. Don't make any comment, just collect the public comment. And that's what we did. So we didn't even review before even we give it to the, licensee. So now, what is our procedure here?
So one of the things that's gonna happen later that's on the agenda, is we'll be doing a motion, what was it calling for a motion to vote on that, the notice of intent that went out back in 2023. To issue, so elicit the comments, we'll be doing a motion to basically recall that, right? So that then public comment can be solicited again, if that's what you want. But right now, I think your guys' goal, right, is to figure out what you want with these rules, and then again, right, it's your process of how you want to proceed, right? You could then vote to initiate rulemaking, right, which is why we have to pull that other one too. It's interesting because like looking at how the Secretary of State's website works too, and like how notices get posted and all that stuff. I had to learn about all that in relationship to this, and Rachel and I had a good call and I learned about how their website works, but because like that got posted, but it's not there anymore because it was over a year, and so it's like, but I just want to set you guys up so there's no question, right, that is the goal, right, is to pull that, so that's, you guys can vote on that later. I'm just assuming you want to. And then now what you can do, right, is like if you guys get through all these today, you guys could vote to either initiate rulemaking, right, where you like that whole, start the whole rulemaking process, or you can vote to get public comment on these, like separate, but not through that Secretary of State process, like through just like a general, like we just want to elicit some comment. But people put it up on the board website or however it is that you want to do that. So those are sort of like, or you just start the rulemaking process, and then that you do get the comments, right? But the hard part is when you get comments in that fashion, it limits how much you can change going forward. That's confusing.
Yeah, board member Patel, and that's what I was very against when we as a board member decided not to follow the process and get the public comment.
Well, I think they did they were trying to get the public.
And then because the way they explained to us, like, don't worry about it, we're not going to impose this, that, another, get the public comment. But then was never review, and there's so many other things go with this one, like there was a work group, I would say there was discrepancy there. So I want to do it right. That is my ultimate goal. I want to do the compounding rule right for all the licensee. And I feel like whatever process we done previously did not get followed like how they supposed to be, and then here we are. So my question is like, if you want to initiate the rulemaking, of course, with all the board members, however they vote, then it's going to be initiate rulemaking is going to be draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, and nothing.
Once you vote to initiate rulemaking, all those deadlines trigger, right? So what would happen is you vote to initiate rulemaking, you go onto the Secretary of State's website, it's like, filed, and then like the 29th, like whatever, however many days for public comment is available, like all of that, and then it comes back and then the board votes to adopt the permanent rule. So that is not. I don't know, the first part of the
I know, it is so confusing.
So
Bree, can you
doing that,
confirm
voting to
what
initiate
you're
rulemaking today would not
It's
put you down
coming.
that path versus voting to like continue the discussion or go down that step 1, step 2. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's cutting in and out.
And then-
So can you pull up?
No, me, I like close enough. The step 1, step 2, step 3 thing, which is, I don't know if that's what you guys want to continue to do, if that's the plan, and I don't. Is that the plan, Gary? I'm not
That
sure.
was prior direction. from
Because,
prior board.
board member Patel, because sometimes when you read the first time, it don't click everything, right? Because everyone is going to make comment. I'm going to hear everyone's perspective. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to say like, what is USP say? What is the FDA say? What other states are doing, right? Then we are going to discuss second time, like, hey, if you look at this, this is what other state do. This is USP do, right? So that was, I'm trying to do. I want to make sure like other licensee, they also have enough time after hearing our comment. They're also, of course, they're also going to do their due diligence, right? So that's what I want to do. And is there any appetite for the work group this time?
Not up to me.
I mean, no, can we? I mean, like legally, you know what I mean? Like there's just, I know we have a power. But can we do that within our, our power we have? Think, Executive Director Ranian, you want to say something? I can see the words.
Executive Director, I have to work on my poker face sometime. As I mentioned yesterday, and I'm not sure this would change any direction, it is my intention to take some of the vacancy savings and invest them in a temporary position. Have someone in mind who's expressed interest in helping us, who's kind of a local industry leader in the compounding business, if you will. I think there are a lot of things that have changed in the compounding world since these were initially constructed. And so from that point until now, I think so much has changed. It's one of the reasons that we're just trying to capture general intent. So we can derive from that where we need to head with these revisions, using the expertise of someone who is very intimately immersed in the compounding world in ways that we just aren't here on this side of things. So I'm not sure if that would sway your direction one way or the other as to whether or not a work group is needed, but that's my intent. Of course, doing so in a way that opens it up for at periods of public comment, obviously is what we want to do as well.
Board President Joyce, so a question for Board Member Patel. So in this particular section, do you see, what are you thinking? I mean, that it needs additional comment, or it needs to be scratched completely, or we should just defer to USP? I mean, what are your comments on this particular section about master formulation? Does it even need to be here? What?
Board Member Patel. I thought it's from day one is very clear. Like we all, just follow the USP and period dot period. Why we are writing down all other things. And when they write down, even it was that time, it wasn't the draft rule. Now it's finalized, right? So to me, is follow USP. Not, but don't do both.
Yeah, I appreciate your, you've been consistent with that. Since I've known you. All right, thank you. Member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, I think my comments will probably be the same for most of these sections. I've thought quite a bit about this. I would only be supportive of anything in addition to what is required within USP if there is a compelling argument for it. And it would have to be quite compelling because USP is the standard of safe compounding practices. So I don't feel like in general in any of these sections, in addition to what's required in USP, I don't know if there's anything that needs to really follow that. Now from the process of getting feedback from folks outside of this room, I think my assumption was the intent of is we were gonna kind of go through this and look at it a little bit more, just this group, and then we would solicit for more feedback broadly, not necessarily a work group, but also not tied to the limitations of formal rulemaking hearings. And that would be, I would be happy with that, because I would like to know, you know, to me, I would like to know if there's something within USP that we would actually want to pull out, right? So I think the simplest example is flavoring. You know, there was, you know, a lot of voices that talked about how when flavoring is done in the same way as compounding, it really limits that as the, you know, so there could be other things within the USP guidelines that we may want to consider to not adopt. I don't know what those are, but I would like to hear about those. But I don't think very strongly that we need to add anything within our rules above and beyond what is already required in USP. And I will say that for all the sections, so you don't have to come back.
Benito.
Board Member Benito, I agree with what Board Member Kroger said and other board members, like USP was put in place for a reason. They do all of the back work and everything that needs to be done. Don't feel like we need to add more to that. Their rules are very clear when it comes to what you can and cannot do, or the requirements that you need to meet. And so I feel like all of this language and everything that we add just confuses licensees on trying to have to find another thing to look for. And USP is already in place. As far as this new pharmacy practice and standard of care that we're going to try to get to, just follow USP. It's kind of black and white. It's one place to look and it's all there. So I feel like that's sufficient. As opposed to all of this other language and things that we're adding on top of our licensees to try to follow.
Or Chin.
I'm in the follow USP with a carve out for flavoring. Unless there is a compelling argument to add something else.
Member Hall, I agree with what's been said. What's the difference between this version, October version and the August version? Because to be honest,
Nothing.
well, they're not matching up exactly. So, because I was using my document from previous just to try to save time, and they're not exactly the same. I was just curious what the differences were.
Staff Member Melvin, I took the August one and highlighted that purple. I added that. And so the line numbers may be different, but can you tell me what you're seeing that's different? Like language is different?
The line numbers are different. So like,
Line numbers are definitely gonna be different because you're viewing this in Word right now. And when we started this conversation, I pushed it down so we could clear out the stuff above it. Are you in the same rule number, 0560?
yeah. Need to follow with the old I guess. So I won't make that mistake next time. Anything else to add?
Board Person Joyce, is there anyone else that wants to chime in for this section? I get the general sense, that, so far, we are just wanting to stick with USP 795 for this section. Is what I'm gathering. And with a potential carve out for flavoring, and we can discuss that. Sure. Any additional comments? No? Gary, back to you.
Executive Director Runyon. So we'll move to the next section. It's parallel to the previous section, but this specifically addresses CSPs or compounded sterile products as opposed to CNSPs or compounded non-sterile products. Again, a lot of the information, the language is going to be the same. We have the effective date up top, which of course is up to you. And if a manufacturer, or sorry, if a master formulation record is required for a CSP in USP 797, the MFR for a CSP must contain the requirements specified in the standard and the following at a minimum: appropriate calculations to determine and verify quantities and concentrations of components, and if performing non-sterile to sterile compounding, the strength or activity of the API. And 2, compatibility and stability information, including USP or other available references. Parent 3, quality control procedures that include the expected results and limits of tolerability for quantitative results. Parent 4, appropriate ancillary instructions such as storage instructions or cautionary statements, including hazardous drug warning labels where appropriate. And parent 5, any other information required by the outlet's policies and procedures.
Okay, so since we're trying to push this through, there's an expectation to make a comment, or if you don't have a comment, just state it. And I get the general sense again that we all want we're wanting 795, but go ahead, Board Member Kirkbride.
I have the same comment as the previous section because it's very similar, so nothing additional.
Thank you. Board Member Smith,
Board Member Smith, no further comment.
Board Member Patel,
Same, just follow USP.
okay. Board Member Kroger, I'm assuming. Okay, Board Member Pineo, USP. Board Member Chen, do you have any strong feelings about any of this?
But
Two.
it could be the same ones mentioned.
Okay, ditto, right, ditto. Jennifer Hall, Board Member Hall.
Overall, nothing to add.
Okay, there you have it, Gary.
All right, we'll keep rolling. 855-183-0570, records or compounding records for compounded non-sterile products. In addition to the compounding record requirements specified in USP 795, the compounding records for a CNSP must contain the following at a minimum. Parent 1, a pharmacist or prescriber with prescribing and dispensing privileges must perform and document verification that each of the following are correct. Parent A, formula. B, calculations to determine and verify quantities and or concentrations of components and strength or activity of each API. Parent C, quantities. Parent D, compounding technique. E, accurate preparation of the CNSP. 2, final yield. 3, documentation of any quality control issue and any adverse reaction or preparation problem, including those reported by the patient, caregiver, or other person, to include corrective actions for any failure. And 4, records of dispensing or transfer of all compounded preparations. And lastly, parent 5, any other information required by the outlet's policies and procedures.
President Joyce, so the same question I have to pose for each of you without going around, that's fine. Please raise your hand or let me know.
This is Board Member Chen. As a public person who has never read the USB, sorry. So the 95 is for the not sterile, the 97 is for the sterile. I get that. Isn't number 1 just what that's just duh? for a pharmacist, why do we have to repeat that stuff? And I'm gonna assume that each of these things is in USP. Why are they called out separately? I don't understand why they're called out separately. If that's standard operating, that's the standard operating procedure, if that's what's in USP 795.
Executive Director Runyon, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's part of the analysis in between where we end today and what we'll bring back at the next point in time.
Okay.
And I think that's brought up previously because I don't think anyone here has all of this memorized to know what's within the confines of USP and what isn't. So we can highlight that for you in a way that would allow you to analyze it.
But for me, especially number one is just, that's practice. I don't think we need to spell out your practice.
For the record, please note that, board member Pinino had to leave. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Question, for board member, executive director Runyon. Some of these are directly copied and pasted, right, from the USP, copy paste?
Executive Director Runyon, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because that seems to be the sentiment of most of the board members here is that, you
That's
know,
my sentiment.
we're just putting, what is it then?
I've never read the USP.
That seems to be, the consensus, or that seems to be where we're going with this,
Board Member Kirkbride, I think what I'm hearing is if they are cut and pasted, we don't want to see them cut and pasted. I don't think anyone is asserting they have memorized these, but if they have been cut and pasted, we don't want to see duplicative information. We only want to see additive information for a very compelling reason, not duplicative.
Board President Joyce, as a comment to that, we have in temporary rule, USP 795, 797, and 800 to follow, or is that's permanent rule, right? Currently in place. So we have the option to potentially, make something more strict. Or are those USP's standards, are they the all we need? So. Any other additional comment? Or Jen?
Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the next section. It should be OAR 855, 183, 0600, prohibited practices.
The next. So you have records for CNSP, and then this is the same thing for CSP. Are you saying skip this? Same.
Yeah, we can look at 575. It looks like it's a carbon copy of the previous sections just for CSPs as opposed to CNSPs. It looks like preliminarily all of the numbering and everything's the same. Yeah, I'm assuming the sentiment would be the same as well.
It's a good assumption, sir.
Thumbs up. Okay.
Sunday.
Okay, now move to section 600, prohibited practices.
Remember these conversations.
The following practices are prohibited in the compounding of a drug preparation. Parent 1, carpet in the compounding area. Parent 2, animal in the compounding area. Joyce, I'll turn it back to you.
I'm assuming these are in 795, 797. Or are these
I don't
additional?
think the animal, this is board member Chen, if I remember correctly, animal was not, I think it was.
Animal was not.
Maybe that
Conversation.
was not.
Board Member Kroger, do you have an answer?
Board member Kroger, I don't believe that they are expressly prohibited in USP. I believe the carpet and the compounding area is kind of like a, you shouldn't. But I do know that, there could be, like mats that you're able to clean on top of carpeting, right? It's a sanitation piece and I'm supportive of clean sanitary environments while you're making, even simple compounds, but I don't think prohibiting carpeting in certain circumstances makes sense, especially if you can get, there's mats that are easily cleaned for, especially like non-hazardous, sterile compounding. Animal in the compounding area. This goes back to the philosophical discussion on the standard of care, to allow a pet, while you're mixing creams, like professional judgment there, or do we feel like we really need to, because we're in such a pet friendly state, really need to be clear about that? But the carpeting piece, I think we need to either have a clarifying statement on that, where we add something around the ability, to utilize a mat that's easily cleaned, or if we just say anything, but I don't think it should be expressly prohibited, because I think that really narrows, especially simple, non-sterile compounds from being completed.
I want to go around on this one. Board Member Smith? Oh, okay, Board Member Chen, go ahead. Well. Okay, Board Member Chen, go ahead. This specific part.
I would defer on the carpet. I am not a fan of animals in compounding areas.
Member Hall.
Overhaul, I'd be okay with saying like, Maureen has a cleanable surface or something to that effect, like the mat. Animals, in designated compounding area, maybe. The wording, when compounding is being done, I don't know.
Do you feel that it needs to be in rule or not?
I'm fine with either way.
In regards to 795, it is, an animal in the compounding area that more a standard of care thing. I mean, if you can keep the area clean, yeah, and keep the areas, a compounding areas clear. But do I feel that it needs to be in rural? Leaning more against that than I am keeping this particular rule. Board Member Kirkbride.
I support being abundantly clear in sanitation. So if we need to comment on flooring, I think we should do so. I, understand that maybe just outline carpet is maybe not the right tactic. So if we need to alter that comment, I do think we need to make a comment on animals, because I do think, it's not addressed elsewhere. I do wonder why we don't just state in the top statement prohibited in the area instead of prohibited in the compounding of a drug preparation. Like, are we saying it's okay in the compounding of non-drug preparation? Like, I think the first sentence should just say area. But that's just me. But yes, I think we should call it out and make it clear, if we, want to, make sure sanitation meets, standards of practice.
Member Smith, just like trying to imagine if we got rid of these and these situations were to arrive in a case, how we would kind of look at that. Feel like if someone brought like an animal into the pharmacy, I mean, I don't feel like that's good practice. And I feel like there's other things that would fall under that to prevent that from happening. And I don't know if it needs to be spelled out in here, especially if we're trying to simplify these to kind of reference USP. So I don't really know if these need to be in here. Well, thank you.
Patel.
But I don't think so. We should spell it out here that prohibiting carpet in compounding area or animal in the compounding area. Well, of course, that's the best practice, but I don't feel we should have this section here in our rules.
I guess it needed, okay. If you get a consensus then, Gary? Gary, Renee?
I think so. We move to the next section, OAR 855-183-0700, preparation according to FDA labeling. So essentially, what you'll see here are the things that do not constitute compounding. So parent 1, mixing, reconstituting, or other such acts that are performed in accordance with directions contained in FDA-approved labeling or supplemental materials provided by the product's manufacturer. Parent 2, preparing a conventionally manufactured sterile product in accordance with the directions in the manufacturer's FDA-approved labeling when the product is prepared as a single dose for an individual patient. And labeling includes information for the diluent, the resultant strength, the container closure system, and BUD or beyond use date. 3, docking and activation of a proprietary bag and vial system in accordance with the FDA-approved labeling for immediate administration to an individual patient. Parent 4, 2024 House Bill 4010, and ORS 689. The addition of a flavoring to a drug intended for dispensation may not be considered compounding if the flavoring parent A is inert, non-allergenic, and has no effect other than imparting a flavor to the drug or modifying the flavor of the drug. And B, does not constitute more than 5% of the total volume of the drug. Turn it back to you, President Joyce.
Right, I know, I'm gonna start off with, Board Member Patel on this topic. Cause you've talked, I understand, but I wanna go this route. Member Patel.
Board Member Patel, I'm still going to stand by it. We should have the FDA definition of compounding. It's always been FDA. State, yes, we can oversee all those compounding facility 53B, but ultimately, if you read all the statutes and the FDA, they are the ultimate, they call the shot. So again, like think about because flavoring is allowed in the FDA definition. So these people, they have to go to our legislator to put this one in statute. So that's what I would say with that one. And yes, product is prepared about 5, I think it's the 5% of the total volume in the, yeah. I want to add anything more. I mean, I have to say a lot, but I think it's just going to be repeat everything, whatever said in the last 4 meetings.
Board Member Kroger.
Board Member Kruger, I think only just one point of more like grammatical consideration for part 4. When you read it, I don't know if we need to, compounding does not include House Bill 2024 House Bill. Yeah, it doesn't. So just make that sound a little bit better would be my preference. Thank you.
Michelle.
I have no additional comments on this.
Paul.
Remember, Hall, I don't have anything to add.
I don't have anything to add either.
I support adding a section and calling out and being very clear what compounding does not include. Especially if it differs from the definition in USP and any statutes that are currently causing a problem for any of our compounding pharmacies or any of our pharmacies. Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
Board Member Smith agrees with Board Member Kirkbride. I think that would be a good idea, that if there are things that we are saying these don't count, I think that would be good to have clear exceptions. That's all. Thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Patel. Additional
But
comment?
does that all in the USP, where does the whole section come from? We just created, or does the USP spell out everything?
Executive Director Runyon, I don't have an answer to that, but could in between now and then, now and when we meet up again. As we were gonna do with all of the other criteria, including labeling and such. I'm not exactly sure. My inclination is that it's not just from one individual source, it's probably a hodgepodge of different sources there.
If that's one is create a problem, this board member Patel, then it's just got hodgepodge rules. So, anyway, thank you.
You.
Okay, Executive Director Running will move to the next section. Section 0730, service for use by veterinarian. I have a note here, except from one of the previous board meetings, staff tried to meet the board's request to clarify that these rules are related to non-food producing animals only. And that's because the FDA has very specific regulations related to how drugs may be prepared and provided to those types of animals. So keep that in mind as I'm reading through the rule. Parent 1, this rule applies to drugs compounded by a drug outlet pharmacy intended for non-food producing animals as defined by the FDA, used by licensed veterinarians. Parent 2, a drug outlet pharmacy may compound drugs intended for non-food producing animal use. Parent A, based on patient-specific prescription from a licensed veterinarian. Parent B, for in-office use, for example, office stock by a licensed veterinarian. And Parent 3, the compounded preparations must not be distributed by an entity other than the drug outlet pharmacy that compounded such veterinary drug preparations. President Joyce.
Board Member Kroger, can you start off with this one?
Board Member Kroger, I have no personal strong opinions on this, but look forward to engaging with the public to hear their thoughts.
Okay, Board Member Chin,
In further evidence,
Member Hall,
Rahal doesn't have anything to add.
okay, Board Member Joyce, yeah, this is, thing to add at this time. Board Member Kirkbride,
I don't have anything to add. It does pique my interest that in-office use, not patient-specific, is on there, because it's different than we do for humans, but, maybe there's a need for that, and that's awesome. If so, I'm not opposed to it, but just caught my eye.
Board Member Smith,
Board Member Smith, nothing to add.
Member Patel,
Board member Patel, nothing to add.
Executive Director Runyon. So we'll move to, I believe it's Division 6, where we house all of our lovely definitions. So as with other divisions, oftentimes we'll have something defined here and a parallel definition or a carbon copy of that in the specific division related to that topic. So essentially we have compounding defined here and also in Division 183. So I think the question here is, would you like to remove it from Division 6 and just keep it housed in 183, the compounding division? And if not, if you'd like it to exist in both places, and then we'll just do the work to ensure that those are congruent or the same definition.
Chin, anything on this part? Good,
I would, it needs to be in one place, so wherever licensees feel that's the best place, I would be comfortable. I don't think it needs to be duplicate.
Member Hall,
Member Hall, yeah, just definitions in one place, doesn't need to be in two places.
and Board President Joyce, I agree. Board Board Member Kirkbride?
Yes, I never thought about this or looked. But, one place, and if we have a chapter called definitions, I think all of our definitions should be there and not in the individual chapters.
Board Member Smith?
Board Member Smith agrees with the majority.
Board Member Patel?
Patel, nothing to it.
Board Kroger?
No comment.
Two days, because these are just references unless you were talking about this one. That would amend 43.
Executive Director Runyon. So we'll read all the rules here. Essentially, the point of this section is to entertain whether or not the board would like to require those to have to follow the same compounding rules that our other licensees are required to follow. Is currently that, I don't believe that's a rule.
Rahul, do you have a comment on that? Those?
I'm trying to figure out where we are. Just the next one down?
And for those who have forgotten, that stands for, that's right there, dispensing practitioner drug outlet.
80 for us, maybe line 80.
Member Hall, don't. I mean, no need to add right now, but you could skip me and come back.
Regarding those, so this was outlined and placed here because it's not addressed USP, right? So, I mean, this particular section, I feel that it needs to be here because it is a different type of a facility, as opposed to your standard institutional, facility or, a retail facility. That's where I'm at, Board Member Kirkbride.
Yeah, I think if that is not addressed, in USP, then I do think we need to address it here. I'm not sure if everything that's listed here, I don't know, we're just talking about the compounded preparations piece of it that's highlighted, or if we're talking about all of it, I'm a little confused, but, if we need to call out how diptos comply with compounding, I support that.
Good, Board Member Smith,
Board Member Smith, no further comments.
Board Member Patel,
Board Member Patel. I think all the facility, who is going to do compounding drug, they should follow the same rule as drug outlet, like compounding pharmacy. I'm just confused at why that's even a question, why they should not follow compounding requirement, like, we have to follow all the rules to make the compounds, and then on the top, we have to follow the USP 795 and 797. So they are not following right now?
Executive Director Runyon. So that's the exact reason this is on here, because they're not. And if we zoom out, I believe that for the Oregon Medical Board's rules, they're not required to. Physicians their rule set doesn't specifically mention that if they're compounding even for in-office use or patient administration directly, that they have to follow the USP standards. So that's one of the reasons that that is here. So if you think back to individuals that are doing like the IV therapy, for example, or they're compounding Ozempic or some of those GLP-1s in office and sending the patients out with it, this currently represents one of those kind of gray areas or I think Board Member Smith says the Swiss cheese model where it kind of falls through the cracks there and they're not directly regulated when they're participating in that particular practice. So this would address that.
Board Member Patel, very good. Thank you for clarification because I have so many questions about that. How come these people are get away with it? Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Now, if we are going to inspect their facility, right? Then of course they have to follow our compounding rules and regulation. If they're going to make the compounding drug, if they are going to make the compounding drug. So definitely, yes, we need this section and yes, they have to follow whatever other pharmacy licensing they have to follow.
Just want to ask a clarifying question because I think I figured it out. We're proposing to add language to the DIPDO rules. We're not talking about language in the compounding, correct? Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Yes, I support the addition to the DIPDO rules section.
Want to support that?
Or Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, I am generally supportive of this, but welcome public input and compelling reasons as to why we wouldn't. Maybe there's a scenario that I am not familiar with. Would love to better understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Chen.
Board Member Chin supports the additional language under the DIPDO for compounding.
Board Member Hall, do you have any? Come back to you.
Oh, no, just thank you for all the comments that helps clarify. So no additional comments.
Back to you, Gary, Second Director.
Okay, we'll move on to the next section. So similar situation here. This isn't housed in the compounding division 183. And this is just an amendment to the correctional facilities, essentially adding the requirements from the previous section for DIPDOs to require them to follow compounding regulations.
Yeah, as Board Member Joyce, I support this. Similar to the DIPDO language. Board Member McBride.
Same, the statement seems pretty clear and simple.
Board Member Smith.
Board Member Smith, also supports this too. Thank you.
Member Patel is also absolutely support this.
Kroger.
Member Kroger supportive, welcomes feedback.
Member Chen. Or Hall.
Member Hall, I support it. I was some wording that I thought was thing, but I don't know if this is where we would mention that or with sorry, my line numbers are all different, so it's 5 F, I think. Says board rules for patient counseling must be observed for each inmate. Yeah. Just didn't know why it said board rule at the beginning, I guess I was confused by that, and then inmate / patient. I guess for, it says who self-administers, is this like when they are released? Just trying to understand that whole section. It's like.
Executive Director, give us, yeah, just a moment.
In some institutions in prison, they do allow to dispense for patients to self-administer. So they will give them their medication at a retail pharmacy and let them keep them in their cells with them so that they can learn.
We can't hear you.
Ability prior to transitioning back into normal population.
In that case, this is board member Hall, counseling to happen or it's given to the patient. I thought I read somewhere where it had to be, maybe it's the next line, the nurse practitioner is on. I don't have any more comments.
Board-
Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry, board member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, I have a question. For both the dipto and the CF, it's late in the day and my brain's worked quite a bit, but the verbiage, sorry, I'm scrolling back. The dipto must ensure that compounded preparations are dispensed in compliance with OAR. Should it say are prepared in compliance? I mean, maybe the definition of dispense is including of preparation, but I want to make sure that that's clear. It's not just like, yeah, I give it to you, but like how it was made was in compliance, and just making sure that that's clear. It just took me a minute to see that. And it says the same thing for the CF too, dispensed in compliance. To me, it should be prepared and dispensed or something, but
Executive Director Runyon, if I'm not mistaken, statutorily dispensing includes preparation and delivery.
just want those folks to know clearly that that's what that means. So especially this is not their board typically that they are responding to and following their rules. So
Steve, second, Director Runyon.
All right, similar situation for this next and last section for community health clinics or CHC. So essentially the same as previous two sections, adding requirements for those to follow the compounding regulations. And I think there's one minor clerical update at the very end. So here in parent 12, the CHC must ensure that compound preparations are dispensed in compliance with Division 183.
Alrighty, board member Kirkbride, your thoughts?
Supported, no additional comments.
Member Smith,
Board member Smith supportive and no additional comments.
Member Patel,
Board Member Patel is also supportive, no additional comment.
Member Kroger, good head nodding yes. Board member Chen,
Member Chin finds it fascinating that I would take pause about the dispensed as well. Knowing that people aren't gonna read our definitions. Or because this isn't their rule packet.
Member Hall,
Member Hall, I support what's there and no additional comments.
additional comments for me as well, Board President Joyce. Board member Patel has an additional comment.
Board Member Patel. So we do the annual inspection for all the facilities, right? No?
Executive Director Runyon, no, for all pharmacies, that's what's in statute. And then there are additional drug outlet types that we do, but not for every single license type, no.
So we don't inspect we don't inspect correction facility. We don't inspect CHC annually, like, what,
We do inspect diptos. We do inspect CHCs, and I think, for example, other license types, depending on what type they are, or what type it is, or perhaps on a rolling calendar, but I believe, but Lance Director at Vermont.
Sorry,
Covered up.
That did not come to fruition. Do not do manufacturers. We've never inspected a manufacturer in the state. Something we've talked about adding to the list. Wholesalers, we do, if we can fit them into our schedules. Diptos are on the regular, as with pharmacies, inspection cycle. CFs, we added to this cycle for this year and drug rooms, but there are a lot of outlet types. And it is very difficult for us to get done what we are getting done, but that could be future board discussions, I think, also. And we also have some rules that have not been changed since around the 70s, so it's kind of hard to inspect some things that maybe need some rule revisions, but they go hand in hand, right? We could see things that could help inform discussions and rules too. So I think this is a great conversation to have more as we have other inspection and self-inspection form, inspection discussion.
Board Member Patel, the reason I ask you is because, they all have the self-inspection form, right? So they will tell like, hey, you're going to do dispense here, prepare and dispense and follow OAR, whatever our rule is. Right? Do you guys include in the self-inspection like we have for all our licensing? Yeah.
Member Economic in rules, it is not required for everyone to do a self-inspection form. So we do the ones for the rules that do require. So like a wholesaler, only wholesaler 1 is required to do a self-inspection. So 2 and 3 are not. So this is, again, the impetus of other rules really needing to possibly be addressed related to consistency. But yes, CHCs have one. Yes, Diptos have one. We do have many of them, and some that are not required that we have out there in case they would like to use.
Oh. A bit scary, but. Thank you.
On the motion, not rulemaking.
It's Executive Director Runyon. So that concludes the compounding portion. President Joseph, I'll turn it back to you for the motion portion of this.
Let me consult with council. All right, so board discussion is concluded. In order to clarify that public comment can occur moving forward, is there a motion to withdraw the notice of proposed rulemaking that was filed with the Secretary, or with the Oregon Secretary of State's office on June 16, 2023 at 1 p.m.?
So moved, Board Member Kirkbride.
There's a second. Joyce, yes. Board Member Kirkbride,
Yes.
Member Chin, Board Member Hall, Board Member Kroger,
Yes.
Board Member Patel.
Motion again.
Sure. We're going to have to reread the motion. In order to clarify that public comment can occur moving forward, is there a motion to withdraw the notice of proposed rulemaking that was filed with the Oregon Secretary of State's office on June 16, 2023 at 1 p.m.?
Oh, there you go. Yes, yes. Because I was like.
Member Patel is a yes. Board Member Pinedo is absent, or has left. Board Member Smith? Okay, motion passes. Board Member Pinedo, not here.
Sorry, I was confused like about which one we are reading because I was like, I didn't see any OAR, so I was like, what we are talking about, which one we.
Yeah, exactly. There was a ton of them.
We can't hear you.
So we'll now review and discuss mailing D. Staff Member Hennigan, or
Not the second motion, no?
I mean, I don't know, did you guys, I don't know if you guys were at where you're at on the compounding rules, if you want to try and send those out for sort of, I don't know if they're ready for any sort of comment at this point, right? No. So.
Unless Gary read all the chapters of USP while we were talking.
More work to do.
all right, Staff Member Hennigan.
And Staff Member Hennigan. I'm going to talk today about retiring pharmacist licenses. During the 2025 renewal period, 82 pharmacists submitted requests to retire their license. 81 of those were confirmed to be in good standing and licensed as pharmacists in Oregon for at least 20 years, as outlined in the rule. So background on this, effective March 1st, 2024, new rules went into effect that revised the process for retiring a pharmacist license. Under these rules, a request to retire a license now requires formal acceptance by the board. So, the OAR states it's 855-115-0045. 2 says that if a pharmacist requests to retire their license prior to the expiration date of the license, the following applies. The license remains in effect until the board accepts the request to retire the license. If the board accepts the request to retire the license, the board will notify the licensee of the date the license is no longer effective. And C states that the board will not accept the request to retire the license if an investigation or disciplinary action against the licensee is pending. So staff did an evaluation of all of the requests to retire this. That occurred in late August, which was after the licenses lapsed on June 30th. Board staff updated the status of the license to retire in the database and began notifying the licensees. 28 of those 82 were notified that their license status had changed from lapsed to retired. Prior to completing this notification process, staff re-reviewed the requirements and along with the approved staff delegated authority, and it was determined that the notifications were issued prematurely because the existing SDA does not address retired license, but rather lapsed in the statement that it can approve voluntary registration and lapsed license requests not connected to any pending investigation or disciplinary action, and that licensing will work with compliance to appropriately lapse registrations with pending investigation or disciplinary action. So, this does not apply to the acceptance of a request to retire a pharmacist license. Board review and acceptance is required. So as a result of this, staff has updated the internal process to align with the rule. Each request will be reviewed and evaluated at the time of submission. And a list of requests to retire pharmacist license will be prepared for review and approval at the next applicable board meeting.
Okay. President Joyce, everybody clear here what the ask is for us? Any questions or comments for Chrissy?
Member Kirkbride. Alternatively, could we add this to the SDA too? Okay, gotcha.
That's their plan.
For now, we'll do this time and improve this in the future.
Member Joyce, yeah, add that to the SDA list. Any other comments or questions regarding this? Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and motion, okay? All right, so is there a motion to move to ratify the approvals to retire pharmacist licenses received during the 2025 renewal cycle?
Board Member Smith.
And board member Hall.
Board President Joyce, yes. Board Vice President Kirkbride.
Yes.
Board Member Chin.
Yes.
Board Member Hall.
Yes.
Board Member Kroger.
Yes.
Board Member Patel.
Yes.
Board Member Piana is absent. Board Member Smith. Okay, motion passes. Board Member Piana absent. We will now review and discuss the annual performance progress report, mailing E with Executive Director Runyon.
Oh, there's a cover page. This is where you're starting. Okay. Oh, you want to go? Okay, I see.
Executive Director Runyon. So we'll review the annual performance progress report. Oregon state agencies submit this annually to the legislature, and it analyzes progress against legislatively approved KPMs or key performance measures. And these reports provide insight into agency strategies, accomplishments, and areas for improvement based on data from the previous fiscal year. Again, this is to inform the legislature and the public how agencies are performing relative to their missions, goals, and these KPMs herein will describe the progress, and it may also include detailed analyses, accomplishments, and areas that need improvement. And these are typically added to the board's website every year. I think ours is currently under review, so we're working with DAS to make some final amendments before you'll see this on the website. So scroll down, KPM 1, not quite. Percent of inspected pharmacies that are in compliance annually. So I think in 2023, we made some revisions to the inspection process. It was fully implemented for the entirety of 2024. Of course, that can create some disparities in reporting because there are different standards that will be reflected if you're looking at the 2023, 2024 data. So scroll down a little bit more. And the definition of what compliant pharmacy is now is different than what it was in 2023. For example, now it's either, there's a primary bifurcation, so it's either after inspection, a response is needed or no response is needed. So that's the definition of a pharmacy being in compliance if there is no response needed. And just for clarity, if on a 2-year inspection, there is one allergy missing, for example, and every single other metric or every other single inspected criteria, if you will, met standards, then we may still, depending on the circumstance, require a response. So per this metric, even though everything was overtly correct and in compliance, that would trigger a response needed. So that pharmacy would be deemed as not in compliance. So I think there's room for discussion, perhaps at the upcoming strategic plan meeting, about how we could better tailor this to reflect what we're doing more directly. As you know, there are a lot of factors that go into whether or not a pharmacy is in compliance, some of which are inextricably intertwined with what we do in our operations and the efficiency of our communications, and some of which are not. So I would be in favor of having that discussion so we can amend this in a way that more appropriately reflects what we do here. KPM number 2, percent of individual and facility licenses that are issued within 30 days. So the target is 75%. And we are very, very close to that. And one thing I'd like to point out, or a couple things, that this number of metric includes individuals and facilities. And so depending on the facility type, there can be a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of disciplinary measures from other states, sometimes multiple states. In other words, the application itself can be quite large. And these metrics do not take into account whether or not the application is complete when it's received. So there are some outline applications, for example, where it may take months of back and forth to get all of the appropriate documentation for that to move through the compliance process to come to the board. And those outliers are going to affect the mean that you see here. So they may not be, or in my opinion, they are not reflective of the efficiency of the licensing process, whether referring to the licensing team or the compliance team's involvement. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, licensing director Hennigan, I think you did some research in terms of how other boards approach this similar metric. So for the State Board of Nursing, for example, I think their clock starts when they receive a complete application. Is that correct? Or do you have any insight about that?
Councilmember Hannigan, I do believe that that is the case. And the medical board may be similar, or they were at one time.
Executive Director Ronan. So here again is another example where a small amendment could modify this KPM in such a way that would be more reflective of the efficiency of our internal processes, and in such a way that takes part of this out of the hands of other people. So it would allow it to be more reflective of what we're doing. KPM 3, this is another fun one, percent of pharmacies inspected every 2 years. So the biennial inspection cycle, as you know, ends on June 30th, every 2 years. And the data for these KPMs are collected starting January 1 through December 31st. So you may have a year that reflects 2 different biennia, if you will. And then furthermore, to further confound this, we have the metric, of course, set for 100% every 2 years, but the annual goal is 50% every year. So you don't have to get your calculator out to know that it's highly unlikely that you're going to do exactly 50% each year. So even if you do 80% in 1 year, you're going to meet the metric, and then you're going to not meet the metric the next year. So again, while I do appreciate the accountability and transparency here, I do think that there might be room to further amend this in a way that makes more, hesitate to say sense, but sense to me anyway, I'll just say that. And again, I would like to use this opportunity to say that I'm very proud of the team for the MAD inspection dash, even being short-staffed over the last several months, or the last several months of the biennial inspection cycle. We still got 100% of those completed. And again, I don't think we've done that in several years. So I appreciate the team's involvement there. And that is instrumental in our ability to promote and protect public health, safety, and welfare. And we can't do that unless we're out in the community, and it aligns with our strategic plan as well. So shout out to the team there. In KPM 4, average number of days to complete an investigation from complaint to board presentation. We saw an explosion of cases starting around, I think, 2022. We went from, I think, about 800 or so per year to well over 1,000. I think it's been over 1,000 for the last 3 years. I haven't seen any sign that that's going to slow down. And again, these case numbers also reflect those outlying situations where we may not have all of the information that we need. It may take several months of back and forth in order to obtain that. So it may not be directly reflective of the efficiency of the compliance team in and of itself. But you can see it's relatively the same as what it was in 2024 and 2025. And I will say we've had several internal meetings, both individually with the compliance and licensing department and as a group, to see in what ways we can further streamline these processes. And I think this coalesces really well with some of the points that were brought up in ways that we can streamline the processes internally in terms of board review, but also ways that we can streamline the preparation process by using SDA. And KPM 5, customer service. So this reflects a percent of customers rating their satisfaction with the agency's customer service as either good or excellent. So there's a slight decrease here from 2023. And the target being 90%. And of course, this was also affected by the staffing limitations, particularly up front, the 50% reduction in full-time licensing staff that had an impact. And this is not like the traditional customer service model or survey. You know, you don't get this every time you call. Frankly, we do a lot of work through compliance officers on phone duty, through email inquiries, through licensing inquiries up front, where they're available essentially all hours of the day that we're open to answer questions, and we don't provide that survey there. So that's not where this comes from. These are upon renewal. Is that correct? Or licensing director Hennigan, you know, provide more insight on that?
Member Hannigan, this goes out to all individuals and facilities that receive a new license.
Executive Director Renton, so all new applicants. In KPM 6, board best practices, which I believe we went over last time. So the percent of total best practices met by the board. And it looks like it's been pretty consistent over the last couple of years, but we did see a positive increase here, and I look forward to that continuing to increase next year. I know there's been a lot of turnover in agency leadership and a lot of changes in the board itself. So I'll look forward to seeing what we can create with that enhanced relationship, transparency, consistency, etc. So hopefully we'll see that number improve next time. And President Joyce, I'll turn it over to you for board discussion. If you like.
But Barbara Smith, do you have any comments on the data here?
Understood, no comments on the data.
From Patel
From Member Patel, no comments.
or Member Kroger
Member Kroger, no, thank you for the information, Gary.
or Chen,
Thank you.
Member Hall,
Board Member Hall, no additional comments. Thank you.
Board President Joyce, thank you very much for presenting this. Question for you, with the news, we have a new software update? Or will the board have a new software update that, you know, that was for the whole budget thing? And then so has that has that been uploaded yet, or what is going on with that? It's been uploaded? No, it has not.
No, Executive Director, and we're still in process. There are a lot of milestones or stage gates, if you will, a lot of incremental steps that have to be met in order for that to occur. So we certainly hope that we're able to get that bid, procure that, implement it, train staff, etc. Before obviously the current software sunsets. But yeah, that's a rather lengthy process. We're making some incremental progress, and after the PFAC meeting at the end of this month, I think we'll have time to, in a concerted way, kind of focus more on that than we have, you know, the last 4 weeks or so. But we are making incremental progress in that and have key deliverables and timelines associated with that I think we'll be able to meet.
I look forward to that, to, it'll help, streamlining, yeah, and in some of the cases, it's interesting because like it's 2025, we're still seeing 2022 cases. That's brought up by board members from time to time, and I can understand some cases do take a lot of time. Maybe part of the strategic plan, we can discuss, streamlining that, maybe creating a sort of statute of limitations. Or like a certain time period where like, oh, this is just too old, the effort is not worth the result. Maybe something like that to consider, because some of the cases, like we're deciding on them 2-3 years later, and it's like, why are we still working on this one? And I think it maybe similar to what happens in the real world. It's like something that happened 3 years ago is no longer relevant today and doesn't really need to be addressed. Let's SDA this. Just thoughts for record, Fred.
That specific idea?
On
What
the,
do you think thoughts
on this.
Oh, on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. The one thing that stood out to me, I think, was, I was surprised to see that our turnaround time on cases still continues to go up, because I feel like we as a board are moving through faster and we're seeing newer cases. But I suspect that just means that overall cases are still high, and as we're still working through older stuff that is delaying getting to newer cases. And so that was a little bit deflating, because I feel like we've all, staff and board have all been working really hard to move through those. And so to see that jump up another number of days was like, but I know we're all trying to do the right thing, and we'll continue to find ways to improve.
Any other additional comments? Otherwise, we'll catch a 10-minute break time. Sound good? All right. I'm sorry, Gary, did you want to continue on with anything? Okay. All right, so let's take our little 10-minute break. Take a breather. It's exactly 2:30, 2:40, please.